You ever get super pumped because you know you're going to sign the listing, but look around and realize this house needs a ton of work? How am I going to get them to clean it out for marketing? Stay tuned. We're going to talk about that next. What's happening? JC Agajanian here, broker associate with the Whistle Realty Group at EXP, recapping the Monday Morning Mastermind for you as we do every week. Today we've got three great topics. First and foremost, we're getting into the rate conversation as it pertains to sellers. We've kind of talked the concept to death with buyers, but these rates are affecting sellers as well, so we had a nice conversation surrounding those types of conversations with our clients. We also had a conversation surrounding the preparation of homes to go live. It doesn't happen on every single property, but often enough there are clients who just don't want to do what it takes to really put the best foot forward with their listing. Finally, we're going to dig into text messages as a campaign, as a strategy, and how you're implementing them into your follow-up. Let's dive straight into this rate conversation with our sellers. It's pretty obvious, at least in Southern California, but likely where you live as well, that people are not really making moves right now out of desire. People are moving for lots of D words like death and divorce and maybe diamond rings or debt or disease, but not out of the important D that usually motivates people, which is desire. They just don't have the desire to make a move. Things are pulling them back. The big thing that's pulling them back, rates. Of course, inventory is followed and affected by rates, but those are the two main things holding people back. We talked about this morning, and the first strategy, or just kind of thinking person's next step in a situation like this is, okay, this makes sense. Let's not try and live in la la land and pretend that these rates aren't high and that their next move isn't going to hurt a little bit, but let's at least try and get some sort of clarity, maybe pin them down a little bit and see if that's just smokescreen and if there's some other reason they're not doing something right now, or if it really is what it seems like at the surface level, which is rates. So in order to try and get that level of certainty so you know whether or not you're actually dealing with the right objection, because frequently we end up going down a rabbit hole trying to cure for one objection when that wasn't even real. That was just something they said to throw you off the scent, and when in reality something else has got them hung up, okay? So in order to do that, like a simple question, I get it, that makes sense. Rates are really high right now. At what rate do you think you would be ready to make a move with a sale and potential purchase to go forward? What is their benchmark? Where do you want to be? What would be an acceptable rate for you if you were to sell your home having to purchase in this market to move on to that move up property or move down property or relocation property, whatever the case may be? This whole concept follows up on the idea that we really need to remind ourselves to always be seeking to understand where each individual person that we're talking to is truly coming from. And another great way to go about this to kind of get to the reality of the objection and if it truly is rates or if it's something else. But the whole line, and this is a great one that we took from one of our agents that we're friends with in Orange County. When the dust settles, do you still have plans to X, Y, and Z, whatever it is? And this is, of course, in a follow-up call. When the dust settles, are you still planning to, or whatever the case may be? So is this still something you want to do? And with that dust settling, is rates getting better, right? Just for clarity. So at least this way, we can continue to pin them down. Is this something you really want to do? Or is the fact that everyone is always saying rates are too high to do anything just a nice place to couch yourself in so that you can end the conversation? A lot of the focus surrounding the conversation today has been surrounding the idea of being real with people and being understanding with where they're coming from. Certainly, if we've already gotten past the smokescreen and we realize that these rates truly are the limiting factor for the person you're speaking to. Let's just accept that and not be pushy and lame and weird. We want to stay in rapport. We want to maintain the relationship that we have initiated and begun to build upon already, but we still want to see if we can help them accomplish something for themselves and see if we can create new inventory, which this market needs so desperately. So maybe a different tact, a little different approach to helping them do something might be surrounding the equity that they have accrued. Seriously, unless they have just bought recently in the past few months or maybe a year or so, they certainly have some equity that they've accrued. And if it's been 5 years or 10 years or more, they're probably sitting on a pile of it. So have you considered what you're doing with this huge amount of equity that you have accrued in your home? Chances are the answer is no, right? So what goals do you have? Are you looking to create a bigger and brighter future for your children? Okay. Do you think that maybe we could have a conversation around pulling some of this equity out of your home and investing in maybe some less expensive pieces of property that you'd be able to pass on to your kids when they're young adults, instead of waiting until they pass away and give their existing home to those kids? Maybe with this new strategy, they can have a launch pad to start their career once they finish college and have a nice job that they're working towards. There's lots of different things that people can do with the equity they've got in their home. They could pull some of this cash out and eliminate any consumer debt they may have that's probably in the 20 to 30% range. Maybe they don't have a solid plan for their kids' college education. Well, maybe they could take some of this out, invest it now so that it will grow and be liquid when it comes time. There's lots of different things people can do, equity they've accrued in their home. Shoot, they could even pull that out and invest into multifamily and now see cash flow coming in. And all of a sudden, monthly budgeting changes for the better significantly because they've taken some money out and gone and made a wise investment. So maybe shifting to what are you going to do with the equity that you've got is a decent way to help them continue moving forward, even if what they would really like to do is make a move with the property they've got now. Because even if they do that, they're not going to pull out 100% of the home's value. They're likely sitting on a lot of money in equity. They can pull out a good majority of that, but even a home equity line of credit is likely not going to let you go to 100%. So you're still going to have some room to work on the home you've got now. You're going to be able to sell it and do something in the future, and you're going to be able to invest for either you or your kids' future, which is awesome as well. So that's kind of another little pivot that we thought you could take it if you need be. And it's a very similar conversation that we are having with buyers right now that we ought to bring up with sellers as well. And we'll leave it with this one, but keep coming back to the same topic. What happens when you decide rates are too high, I'm not going to put my house on the market because it means I'm going to have to go buy, a more expensive home or a less expensive home or a home that sits elsewhere with these higher rates, right? And it's like, okay, that's fair, but what happens when you decide to do that? Everybody else and their mother has decided to do that as well. I mean, we've just got hordes of people waiting on the sidelines, deciding it's not favorable now to get in the game. I'm going to do so later. And when that happens, we are going to see some of the same insane competition, the same multiple offers, the same skyrocketing prices that we saw during the COVID years. So that's something that you don't really want your clients to get into. Just remind them of this. Say, listen, we've got to find this middle ground. Maybe we take advantage of the buy downs that are out there right now, or we do something else creative to help make the move now palatable, knowing that later, when everybody else comes off those sidelines because rates are better, or at least as good as it seems like they're going to get, and they want to go out and buy, at least at that point, you're just refinancing instead of throwing elbows and fighting everybody else for the same home, just like we experienced last time. So don't forget to remind them of that same buyer conversation you're having with those sellers as you go through the situation. So we're going to move on now to prepping your listings for going live, and for those maybe not rare, but a little more often than you'd like to have experiences of sellers who are just either lazy, unable to physically do things, or maybe mentally can't get over the concept of letting stuff go. For whatever case, you've signed a listing, you know exactly what needs to happen, but they're just not cooperating. They're not following the game plan that you've laid out for them. What are we going to do? Like I mentioned, introducing the subject, a lot of times people just don't want to let go of things, or they don't want to throw things away. Okay, that's a little bit more of a psychological play, and we may need to recruit family to help us to let things go, or assistance. Like, can we get somebody who will physically do the work so that all you have to do is stomach the fact that that's not going to be here in the home anymore, and it's either going to go to storage, or it's going to go to be given away, or it's going to go to the trash. Those 3 piles are huge. Just FYI, we'll take a step back. Like, the very basics are to coach people through that. Like, hey, don't try and conquer this whole thing on your own right now. Let's just start with 3 piles. One of them is going to be thrown away for sure. This is trash. We don't care about it. Something else is in good condition. And, I guess we can see ourselves letting go of it, but don't want to throw it away. So we'll donate that. We'll give it away. And then finally, I just can't let go of this. We've got to keep it, and it's going to go in storage. So that's the basics on the 3 pile thing. But what should we do? How are we going to implement a system that was going to address this with regularity? Because even though most people are willing to think for themselves, gosh, the better this home looks, the better I'm going to do with the sale of this property, frequently enough, we come across these issues where it's really hard to get a home properly prepped. So what are we going to do? We've had plenty of ideas. Should you connect with a vendor? Should you have something, let's say you're on a larger team, built into your company as an offering that addresses this? Like, what is the best way to go about this? Well, what we've done at our company is we've chosen to simply outsource an interior designer. We have somebody on speed dial. She is available to go out. Her initial fee is preset. It's not expensive. It's something that I take on myself. Other people on the call this morning were talking about the similar setup with vendors who don't charge for the initial, inspection and list of suggestions. So we haven't come across that yet, but it's affordable and it's worth it. The whole concept behind having a professional, an interior designer, or a professional stager come in is to take you out of being the bad guy. Like, I just want to be rainbows and sunshine and a little bit, of grounded reality with direction and strategy. Like, that's where I want to play. I don't want to be the guy saying, look, I know you love this couch, but it's terrible. You got to get rid of it. I know you love all these photos of your family from 50 years ago. They've got to go. I don't want to be the one saying that. And I would be happy to pay $50 or $100 or even more to have someone come in, walk through the property, and nicely break that news to them without me having anything to do with it. It's a wise move if you think about it. We've chosen to outsource an interior designer. It's the same person. We call her on a regular basis. She comes in and she's smart about it. She knows how to hold the client's hand, explain what needs to be done, explain that the overwhelming majority is simply decluttering, and it's not them. They're not unique. This is normal, that every home needs to be decluttered, et cetera, et cetera. Getting them on board with the concept of what needs to be done. And hopefully that designer will be able to get them to move in the right direction and even deliver some not so great to hear news so that I don't have to do it. She's going to give them a roadmap. She's going to give them a checklist. She's going to give them things that need to be done, and she's going to give them a deadline, right? So that's really the most important piece is just spelling it out clearly. We need to do A, B, and C. If you need help, this is how you can get it done, and it needs to be done by this time. And then I can partner in with that conversation and say, yeah, you know what, that timeline meets perfectly, because if we get that done by this date, then I'm going to be able to come in and get the house cleaned and then the house staged appropriately, maybe with that stager or with their own stuff. I'm going to be able to bring the photography in. I'm going to be able to start my marketing. All of this stuff is contingent on you clearing this house out. So just explaining the deadlines and the timelines that lead to that sale are important to connect the pieces all together. You might try and also find a time after this consult has taken place to get a little serious with them and be like, hey, listen, can I be direct with you? Just to be clear, if I didn't explain how important it is that we follow these instructions we've just been given, specifically to the T, exactly as given, I'd just be letting you down. Like, this is actually a huge part of what we do, is presenting the home to them. And truly, we would be doing ourselves a disservice by not letting you know exactly how to do these things and to do precisely what she has to do. It's that important. Try and change the tone, change maybe the location, the setting of the conversation, and just follow up and be like, this is something that you really need to focus on. Please don't blow it off. Please don't take it as, another nice thing that my agent did for me, which is give me some ideas on how to prep the home. No. That's not the point here. This is something we want done, and we want done precisely the way we were told how to do it. We also can share with them, hey, we will definitely be leaving money on the table by not taking the advice that this designer has given us. We need to take it as marching orders. We need to follow through exactly. So, if that's not a concern for you, no problem, but I need you to know there's going to be a direct correlation between our ultimate sales price and how this home presents itself to the public. So, yeah, that's just getting real with them. Being nice, kind, friendly, but we have to be direct, we have to be real, we have to explain that this is important, especially if we're in one of these homes that almost feels like it ought to be on TV for the hoarders. So another thing that can help with this is to set the table appropriately when we first begin this conversation, when we first start this relationship with this seller. We want to really establish ourselves as a consultant helping this person through this process, not just another agent who's going to, put some signs up in the neighborhood and do an open house, right? Like there's so much more that we are doing. And a lot of this comes from the soft skills, the understanding of what needs to be done and how to prepare so that when we get to the end result and we actually launch this listing to the public, it's going to go right. And at our office, we draw a great analogy a lot of times. We lean on Hollywood, right? Like they don't spend all the ridiculous money and time to get these stars and directors and all this huge crew to make a movie and then say, it's done editing, let's put it up. No, there is an elaborate launch of this Hollywood movie, right? There's large red carpet parties going on with media. There's trailers that are taking place on TV for months in advance. But when you go to see a movie, you see the ads for the movie before. This is a thought out, well-planned scheme to get you into the theater to see this movie. If they're doing all that with another movie, they make tons of them for each production house every year. Why wouldn't you take the same approach with the one time you're going to sell this home? Let's have it roll out with a strategic plan, just like we would if we were launching a new movie. And of course, this seems to resonate with people when you explain it that way. Well, along the same lines, you just remind them when you're talking to them, they brought us here to help them maximize their sales price and minimize the marketing time. That's kind of the main goal of most sellers. And if you've got a seller who doesn't have that as their goal, be aware of it. But that's generally what folks want. It may be tough sometimes to make hard decisions. They're going to need to be made in order to accomplish all they can with their sale. So it's kind of all couched in, you're the consultant, not just another agent. We explain how we do things and reminding them of why we're here and why they brought us in the first place. When you're sitting in front of them with your CMA, a different idea on CMAs was brought up today than I usually do. I prefer, if I can, to have at least 3 active comps and 3 sold comps so we know where the market's headed and where it's been, and we have that conversation with our sellers. But another agent today spoke up and said, you know what, maybe you just clamp it down and just have only 3 and just go in hard on them. Take your time. Fold the page through every single photo the MLS had to present to them and pour through the property description of each comparable sale and stop at each one and say, okay, how do you think your home compares to this one? Are we equal? Are we better? Or are we maybe a little worth less than that one? And having just slowing down the CMA process and going in hard on each individual comp and saying, okay, you tell me, what do you think? You think we should be priced higher than this one that just got this price? Equal or less? And go through that with just 3 really good comps and maybe strategically use one that is pretty ho-hum condition or even crappy, one that is run-of-the-mill, and then one that's super high-end and updated and upgraded and very nice. And just present it to them. And hopefully, as long as they're level-headed, they'll see which one is most similar to their home, and they'll fall in line with that pricing strategy in addition to the fix-up strategy that we're talking about. So we've talked a ton about this whole thing of fixing up the home, getting it ready, prepped for marketing and everything. But the entire conversation was based around the fact of the assumption that I brought up earlier, which is that they want to maximize their sales price and minimize their market time. Some sellers, that's not the same goal as they have. Some people are happy and might even feel strongly about prioritizing the ease of the speed of the sale as opposed to maximizing the sale. If just getting rid of the damn thing is their goal and they don't really care about leaving some money on the table because it didn't present well, because their house is overflowing with personal possessions, well then maybe we shouldn't talk them out of it. At that point, maybe you've got an investor who will come in, clear the place out, put some carpet and paint down. Maybe it needs more, maybe it doesn't, but if that's all it needs, you could end up doing something significantly better for that seller than trying to convince them to completely upend their entire lives by changing everything and getting it show ready. Maybe they don't want that. Maybe they'd be happy to sacrifice that extra cash that they could get, sell it to an investor real quick. You all of a sudden are collecting both sides of that deal. Now you're going to get a third side with the relist, and it's going to look a lot better and sell for more that time as well. Maybe it's a win-win for everybody. We have to remember that all sellers, all clients in general, for that matter, are not working with the same motivation. It is our job to root those out, figure out what it is that's most important to them, and then how can we, with the tools that we have, come alongside and meet those needs. That's where we really ought to be. So keep that in mind. Even though we've had some great ideas and tips and ways to get this thing done, it might not need to be done at all. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll move on to text messaging campaigns. The main thing that brought this question about was the topic of cadence and texting in drip campaigns in light of the new mandatory opt-out options that a lot of CRMs and other tools are implementing. That's kind of where this person was coming from. Like, are you making changes to how you're texting people and how many times you're doing that? And pretty much right away, we kind of got off that as the primary focus of this topic, because while that is important, the thing is, texting is just one piece of a much larger way that we are trying to reach out to people. People immediately started to remind each other, like, hey, that text needs to be followed up by calls. In some cases, it needs to be preceded by phone calls. And we also need to be blending in email as well. So just using text as your primary source. Sure, everyone mentally thinks, millennials and Gen Zs are all text all the time. They're never going to want to talk on the phone. But actually, there was a recent NAR study that suggests that's not necessarily the right assumption to make. Regardless of age group or generation segment, text messages should be blended with phone calls. People actually do want to speak to someone, maybe just not right away. The younger generations may be liking the idea of a text warm up first. Gen X is kind of being in the middle, being open to both text and phone calls, and email, with the boomers just wanting to talk to someone on the phone and not be bothered with text. And of course, this is a generalization. Obviously, you can't speak for all different people, but this is what the study suggests. So first things first, make the call. Make it twice. Make it 3 times if you need to. I don't know about you, but when I see a phone ringing and I don't recognize the phone number, chances of me answering it are not too good. If that thing gets ignored and then comes in again with the same number a minute later or less, I might think twice about answering that phone. And if the same thing happens a 3rd time in a row, I'm probably going to want to know who is calling me and what do they want, right? And that may seem like a negative way to answer the phone, but if you're good when the phone gets answered and you explain who you are and what you want right away before even making your introduction, hey, my name's JC. The reason for my call is that you were checking out some homes on my website and I wanted to see how the searches come along, or something similar like that. You reached out for an inquiry about your home's value. I got it over to you right away. Have you had a chance to look at it? Who are you and what do you want? It's part of your introduction. Now that's going to change the tone of that call, even if they were a little heated because it was 3 times in a row when it came in the first place. So obviously, do not leave a voicemail when you first call. Probably don't even leave it on that second ring, but give it a solid war dial, right? Give it a solid 3 tries to get the person on the phone with the right answer once they do pick up the phone, explaining who you are and why you're calling, and then move on to text messages and email. If this is part of a campaign that you've set up and a lot of it is going to be happening automatically without you clicking buttons, consider including maybe some sort of commentary that let people know that you are attempting to reach them through different methods of communication. You're not a crazy person who's just calling, texting, and emailing immediately, but hey, I understand not everybody likes to be communicated with in the same way, so I've tried you on the phone. I'm going ahead and texting you now as well. Let me know which communication method you prefer the most, and I'll stay in that lane for you. Or same thing, here's an email coming in. I understand that we've already texted you. Wasn't quite sure if you prefer email over text. I'm trying you here as well. So just acknowledging the fact that you're doing all of it can go a long way instead of getting a weird first impression, which is probably pretty common with a lot of the campaigns and strategies that we have either out of the box from these new tools that we buy or from the systems that we've created on our own. Overall, the first 10 days should be pretty aggressive. You want to make contact with this person because regardless of the way they came in, it took some either sweat equity or check equity, right? You're either out there knocking on doors, you're doing open houses, you're cold calling and circle dialing, or you're paying money for Google pay-per-click ads or big money for Zillow ads or whatever the case may be. You're either spending a lot of time or a lot of money to get these people's contact information, so don't waste it. Get aggressive for the first week or two until contact is made, and then you can understand what the appropriate cadence of timing ought to be going forward, and that includes whether or not it is text message, phone call, or email going forward. I hope all this is helpful for you. We covered a lot from conversations with sellers talking about interest rates to prepping homes to go live, and of course these text messages and how they're involved in your current campaigns. I'm always happy to chat. Feel free to reach out, comment, or message me right here, and I look forward to talking to you soon.